Okay, well, welcome everybody. We are so excited that so many of you have come to join us. And because this began as a conversation in one of our Interfaith United New York City meetings. Interfaith United New York City is a new initiative to bring together faith-based and interfaith organizations around New York City to share best practices, to share understanding about the challenges that are facing our communities, share resources, and to come together to work on the problems in our city. And at the meeting, John Cho spoke about the dire need of that he is seeing in Flushing, and hence came about this event. We brought together key players in Flushing and also in all over Queens and New York City who are working both to provide food for those in need and finding long-term solutions. And in Judaism and many of our faiths, we believe that God created the world with sufficient resources for all of our creations. It's sometimes a matter of luck or birth that we may have abundance or scarcity. And it's up to us to bring justice, to bring tzedek to those in need to rectify this. And that is what our purpose is today. So I will begin by introducing a very quick introduction to all of our panelists. Our moderator today will be Rabbi Joe Potasnik, who is the Executive Vice President of the New York Board of Rabbis and Chaplain of the New York City Fire Department. Joel Berg is the CEO of Hunger Free America, which is formerly known as the New York City Coalition Against Hunger. John Cho is the Executive Director of the Greater Flushing Chamber of Commerce and a founding member of the Flushing Interfaith Council. Alexander Rappaport is the CEO of Masbia, a nonprofit soup kitchen network and food pantry serving both Brooklyn and Queens. Pedro Rodriguez, who will be joining us soon, is the CEO of La Jornada Food Pantry in the heart of Queens. Jennifer Smith is the Food Resources Supervisor at the Catholic Charities in Brooklyn, Queens. And Ravi Vidyata is the spiritual leader and scholar and the director of religious affairs at the Hindu Temple Society of North America. And then with that, I'll turn that over to Joe to begin our discussion.
Thank you, Rabbi Zalma. And let me also add special thank yous to other people on this call. Firstly, Rabbi Michael Miller, who is the executive, the CEO of JCRC, Bob Kaplan, who does so much great work. I'm not sure of his exact title, but I know that he's always involved in the community. And thank the two of them and you for the vision of bringing together faith communities. I once said to a group of people that it's interesting, when you look at the various faith chapels, for example, Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn has different faith chapels, one contiguous to the other. And you recognize that we can walk on separate paths to our houses of worship, but there comes a moment when we have to walk together as one faith community. And that's what this is about. The issue of food insecurity is not a problem that is endemic to one particular group, but endemic to all of us. So therefore, the solution has to come from all of us collaborating and finding, some way of making things better. So let me begin with this question. People on this call, people who are panelists, come from different faith traditions. Can you just talk shortly what your faith tradition says to you about commitment to this issue? Why don't we begin with Jennifer, Catholic Charities?
Hi, sure. So the Catholic tradition is based, the core of it, Catholic social tradition, is that every life should be lived with dignity, and that comes with rights and responsibilities. The right to live a dignified life, to have basic needs met, and also the responsibility to further that and create your community with protecting their rights and dignity to live. So that goes, I mean, that's Catholic Charities' mission. It's our mission statement, the teachings of Jesus Christ, to help the vulnerable of our society. And our food pantries are the front lines doing that at this time, really.
Thank you. John?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. First, I just want to recognize Dr. Uma Maisareka, who is the president of the Hindu Temple Society, who's joined us today. I'm a member, in addition to being a founding board member of the Interfaith Council, I'm a member of the Flushing Meeting of the Religious Society of Friends. And we Quakers believe that all humans, all living beings have a light within. And that light within means that we are all equal in the eyes of God. And therefore, we must, as human beings, look out for each other as brothers and sisters. And Quakers have a tradition of social activism, of going out into the community and helping those who are less fortunate. I'm very lucky to be a member of Flushing Meeting, which has been meeting at our meeting house for more than 300 years, and as a symbol of religious freedom. And I think part of that religious freedom means that we have a social responsibility to our community. And so that's really what drives and motivates me to do what I do today. Thank you.
All right, Joel?
I am Joel Berg with Hunger Free America. I was raised in the Jewish tradition, and I can say that I just, since I had a lot of time at home, read the complete King James Bible in the last few months, from Exodus all the way through to Revelation. So the Torah, the entire Hebrew Bible, and the entire New Testament. And as all of you who are clergy people know, there are a lot of contradictions even between parts of the Old Testament and other parts of the Old Testament. There are a lot of contradictions within the New Testament, and there's certainly major differences, obviously, between the Old and New Testament. The only thing that was consistent to me throughout the text was the commandment to do something serious about inequality of wealth, poverty, and hunger. And I seriously say, other than believing in one Lord, the only other unifying message really was do something serious about this. And in neither the Old Testament or the New Testament was it about charity. It was about a commandment. It was about systematic ways to address these issues. As many of you know, this is a central commandment of the Holy Quran. It's a central tenet of Buddhism and Hinduism. It's a central tenet of every major ethical tradition on the planet, religious and secular. And so I think both as a Jew, but as a humanist who cares about the entire country, it's clear every tradition tells us we must do something serious about this.
All right, Alexander.
Hello, good morning, and thank you everybody for joining. I'll just give it, I can only speak for myself when it comes to this. From my upbringing, it's a lot about unconditional sharing. It's not social engineering, it's just sharing the people who have plentiful, sharing with the less fortunate, just for the sake of sharing, for the sake of people with good hearts, making sure those who don't have get something. And obviously greater justice, but in the context of what we do is every day one person fed has made a difference in one person's life.
That's good. Has Pedro joined us yet? I'm sure he's on the call yet. All right. Let me just say, in listening to all of you, there is a quotation that those who close their eyes or turn their backs never see tears. And I think we're very fortunate to have people like you who don't close your eyes, don't turn your backs, but recognize that we cannot simply look the other way as people are hurting out there. I think that's one of the reasons why houses of worship have windows, because what we say on the inside, we have to see on the outside. We say all of these great things inside of our need to help one another, and then we go outside. Hopefully that message continues. So thank you all for the great work you do. We're going to hear about this today. Let me turn for a moment to Joel.
Actually, I'm going to interrupt a moment. I left something out in my introduction.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
And that is, please feel free to populate the chat with questions. We will be going through them, and there'll be time at the end, and I will be asking your questions. So please feel free, comments, questions, share the work that you're doing. Feel free to use the chat. Thank you. Back to you, Rabbi Joe.
All right, thanks. So I've heard some information about SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And I have to say, and Joel, you know more about this than I do, I was shocked, depressingly shocked, when I saw the numbers of what is given, what the eligibility requirements are, because frankly, when looking at these numbers, I don't know how people survive, how you get by. For example, about $204 a month, I saw that. That's for one person. A month, 30 or 31 days. Joe, why don't you expand on that?
Thank you, Rabbi. I would say two things about SNAP and the safety net in general. It is wholly inadequate. The people who do get benefits get too little. It's far too hard to get the benefits, and too many people, including hardworking immigrants doing some of the most dangerous jobs, are legally excluded from the program. That being said, the safety net absolutely dwarfs the charitable response. As small and underutilized as the government safety net, including SNAP, is, it's 15 times the dollar amount of food distributed by every charity in America. While SNAP benefits are only a few $100s per person per month in New York City on average, some are higher, some as low as $16 a month for some seniors, that's still larger than what most soup kitchens and food pantries give out. Many food pantries, you can only come once or twice a month, and you might get $20 or $30 worth of food. So you say, oh, well, $200 of SNAP, that's nothing, but that's a heck of a lot more, unfortunately, than what the pantries and kitchens give out. And just some facts, SNAP is a counter-cyclical program, so it's designed to increase when the economy is bad. And in New York City, the caseload just between March and September rose by 15%. That's a huge increase over just a few months. And because the caseload increased, and because Nancy Pelosi got the House to pass and then convinced the Senate and President Trump to go along with a partial increase in SNAP, the actual spending on SNAP increased by $80 million a month. And so in August alone, the SNAP program spent $298 million on food in New York City. It is wholly inadequate. I hope any of you who engage in any sort of advocacy whatsoever immediately contact your senators and senators in other states. And if you're part of denominations who have members in places like Kentucky, get the Senate to pass the increase in SNAP that was passed by the House last May. That's critical. And we also need to get the new administration to take administrative action to make it easier for more people to get these benefits. And I have talked to the transition team, and I'm cautiously optimistic, but it would be great for all of you to weigh in as well.
So, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong. If I were to solely depend on SNAP to get by, I would starve to death.
Well, you might not starve to death, but your life certainly wouldn't be pleasant. It certainly wouldn't be healthy, depending on your situation. I actually lived on a food stamp diet for 2 times for a week, mostly as a stunt. I don't pretend I know anything what it's like to really live on this, because I knew it would be over in a week. You can probably kind of sort of survive on ramen noodles, but you certainly won't be healthy. And that's where we are with the safety net in America. It's big enough to prevent, at least for now, mass starvation, but not big enough to have people healthy lives. And because of this level of food insecurity we have with the safety net, we still have food insecure children who learn less well. To be schooled, you must be fueled. To be well-read, you must be well-fed. We have hungry workers who can't work as productively. We have hungry seniors who can't stay independent. So even if people aren't starving yet, although I will say, if the Senate doesn't act, and if we don't expand SNAP, and if we don't extend unemployment benefits, if we don't get other stimulus checks to help people pay for rent, we really will move to the starvation stage. But it's certainly a wholly inadequate diet. Senator Gillibrand has a bill proposed to increase the overall purchasing power of SNAP, and we strongly support that.
All right, thanks. People hear numbers, and that's important, but there are faces, there are people, human beings that go with the numbers. So let's talk about some of the individual work that's done by your organizations. Ravi, let's go to you. And Ravi, by the way, I should have asked you before about your tradition in terms of responsibility to those who are hungry. So talk about that and then go into the organization work you do.
Yeah. Hi. See, first, I would like to just give a few words about what our text says about food offerings. Our faith teaches us anyone who is hungry shall be fed without any discrimination or judgment. Getting hungry is a natural phenomenon, not because of poverty or anything else. Whoever gets hungry, it's a natural phenomenon, but every living entity have this feeling, and every living entity have to be fed for the survival. That's number one. We have a righteous act called dana. Dana means it is act of giving. It is considered as a ritual duties and obligations for everyone in our Hindu faith. Offering food is one of the oldest and most common rituals, and we represent it as Maheshwara Puja or Annadana. So Dana, I said, it is act of giving. Anna means food. Okay, so Annadana we say. So offering food is a meritorious act, and it is an act connecting with the spiritual world. Of course, the precise doctrine behind this differs from school to another school, as like one faith to other faith also. So it's one of the best charity that we consider. By offering food to others, it is considered that feeding none other than the Lord himself and receives his blessings in bountiful measures. Anyone, again, I would like to emphasize that anyone who feel hungry has to be fed without any discrimination or judgment. Of course, we at Hindu temple, we do food offering every day, calling it as Annadana. The first lot of food made in our kitchen every day is offered to the divinity God. And after the prayer services, the blessed food is distributed to people present at that point of time without any discrimination. I would like to just quote one verse, which is very interesting and very authentic. Gajaturaga sahasram gokulam kotidhanam kanaka rajata patram metini sagarantam. It's a Sanskrit text. I'll just, instead of wasting time, I'll just directly give you the meaning. Even if one gift 1,000 elephants or horses, or gift 10 million cows, or even any number of silver or gold articles, or give the entire land, or offer the entire services of the clan, or helps to cover the wedding expenses of 10 million women, all this is never equal to Annadana. Annadana means offering food. So it's like food for thought, food for knowledge. It is food for hunger and survival. Of course, there is lot of other danas. The next come education. So we should not deprive or deny food for anyone, like knowledge. Thank you.
Yeah, Ravi, you know, when I spoke to you yesterday, you made a strong impression on me that when someone comes, and this is true of everybody on the panel, you're all proud devotees of your respective religion. But when someone comes seeking food, you don't ask the person, what religion are you? You know that that person is hungry and the person is coming there, and therefore we are required by our faith to help that person. Jennifer, let's go to you. Talk about what you do, your organization.
Our organization, well, we have many lines of service. I happen to be in charge of the food pantries. So we have a network of 20 food pantries that run various days of the week, every day except Sunday. Pre-COVID, I was at the pantries, overseeing, procuring food, getting grants. Since COVID, our team has gone out. We've been working in the field every day at the pantries, packing bags, handing out food. Our pantries run with a network of volunteers, over 200 volunteers. Most of them are in their retirement, 60s and 70s. So we're encouraging them to stay behind the scenes, and we're really trying to get out into the community and feed people. Basically, we do that every day. You got me? Today, we have a food pantry going on outside right now. There's 400 people online when I came in. So that's what we do.
Thank you. John?
Yes, through my work at the Chamber of Commerce and the Flushing Interfaith Council, we have been supporting over the past 8 months the local food pantries here. When the pandemic first hit our community, we organized news conferences. We reached out to all the different faith groups as well as funders to try and get funding into the food pantries. We've raised thousands of dollars from individuals and organizations, houses of worship in our community. We have also recruited hundreds of volunteers. Currently, we are supporting the La Jornada Food Pantry, which is feeding 10,000 people every week in downtown Flushing. I personally have a team of volunteers coming every Saturday to help give out hot meals as well as prepare groceries for the families that are coming in. And then on Tuesdays, we deliver food from the Queens YWCA to homebound individuals, including senior citizens who cannot leave their homes. It's absolutely devastating what's going on in Flushing, Queens, and I hope this forum will help spotlight and bring more attention to what's going on in our community. It's a humanitarian disaster that's unfolding around us.
Alexander.
Thank you. So it must be we're a network of 3 locations, 2 in Brooklyn, 1 in Queens. We'll focus in on Queens today, but we generally do, before COVID, we do food only. So we're a restaurant style soup kitchen where people come in and have a meal. That stopped right away when we announced that we're going to do only 2 go because of the pandemic. And then we do a food pantry. We went from serving, let's say, about 100 families a day to 500 families a day. It's a 500% increase in demand. We also increased the ready-to-eat meals for from 200 to some days to a couple of thousand individual ready-to-go meals. The volume is so big, and the chaos it created on the street was going around the corner, almost kind of wrapping the block around, that we were forced to get into a digital bread line where we now give people appointments. But in order to keep up with the demand, we added hours and added hours and added hours, where the addition from the night and addition from the morning met each other. And then we're now open the last couple of weeks for 24 hours and kind of serving people. And again, we try to do it in the most dignified way where there isn't this long wait for a couple of hours on a bread line. So we're using this app to get people like a 10-minute window when they can come for their pickup. And we're kind of staggering it around. So we have now 3 locations, 5 days a week, 24 hours. We start on Sunday and finish on Friday. And there's 2 things. You can get raw food that you take home for the entire family, and then you can get ready to eat food. We operate everything outside. With God's help, none of our staff got sick throughout the pandemic. We were open throughout, but just because of being very careful and operating only in the outside, and we hired security guards to be like bouncers for social distancing. And so that's kind of what we do. But what's sad about it is that kind of like America is turning into a breadline, like Joel said before. The best way to do this would be to do it through food stamps, through getting people unemployment insurance and things like that. The fact that regular families and people, nurses, after they finish their shift, come in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. to a food pantry is just so sad in so many ways to what's happening to us as a community, as Americans. It's just, we had days where 90% of our clients were first timers, meaning to say, before COVID, there was like 5, maybe 10% people who were never there before. There's always like new people, mainly people who are second and third and 10th time visitors. Well, we had for months in the beginning of COVID where the script was flipped, where people were first time, people who don't know soup kitchen and food pantry etiquette. They were never at a bread line. They didn't know how does this work? What do I say thank you to? Where does the line start? Where does the line finish? And things like that, because these were regular working class people who are now for the first time forced, the lack of many options. And I'll just share one more thing. We needed to hire. We used to have 1,000 hours of volunteers every week. In the beginning of the pandemic, people were very scared to come out. We hired a lot of temps, but then we moved into make real hires, permanent hires. So we're now a team of 35 instead of a team of 12 since the beginning of the pandemic. We put out a text message to our clients, to about 30,000 clients who are kind of our universe of clients who were here in the last 6 months. We got hundreds and hundreds of resumes, people wanting overqualified, people ready to work, ready to do anything in the middle of the night, the middle of the day. And these are people are now in a bread line in America.
Yeah. I just want to make a few observations. Let me talk about BC, not in the religious sense, but before COVID. The statistic was 1 out of 5 people in New York City suffered from food insecurity, 1 out of 5. Now, New York City is what, about 8.3 million? So that's a pretty significant number when you say 1 out of 5. Now, post-COVID, 1 out of 4. So the numbers have increased substantially because 1 out of 4, you're talking about 2 million people who are suffering with food insecurity. I remember when I was out in Salt Lake City visiting with the Mormon community, I saw something fascinating. They do a lot of outreach to the poor, and they have a particular store where people can come in and buy groceries, buy clothing, and each person has a credit card that they can obtain. The poor people also have credit cards given to them by members of the Mormon community, and that credit card looks the same as all of the others because they don't want to shame anybody. They don't want to embarrass anyone. We have a statement in our tradition, don't rob the poor. Some say, well, how can you rob the poor if they don't have anything? So, well, don't rob them of their dignity. So talking to all of you, you don't just hand out food. I think you also engage, from what I've seen at some of the food pantries, you engage in conversation. You're talking to human beings. Can you share some of the personal stories? What are some of the causes that people have related to you as to why they're suffering in this way? Some of the things that people may not know. And let's begin with anyone who wants to be first.
Hi. Okay, I'll talk. Now that I am every day of the week working in a food pantry, handing out food, and the stories I hear they can be heartbreaking, uplifting. Every day there's a reason to laugh and cry. I have seen the amount of working or previously working men that are coming to our food pantries now, restaurant workers who've been let go, day laborers who can't find work. And they're humbly coming and asking for food, and it's so out of their character to do that, but they have to do it for their family. I have one gentleman who came back in March who worked he worked at a restaurant in the city. He was let go and had worked there for 17 years, was devastated to be let go. They were laid off temporarily, and he was so grateful. He came through the months of March and April. He came and he was so grateful to it. I mean, just he was so grateful that we were there to help. And he came, the last time he came was right after Easter in April or the end of March. And he said, I've gotten work. You've helped me so much. And he was so grateful, and he's come back to volunteer when he can. And unfortunately, he came back again the first week in November. He was let go. He can't find work, and he's back again. And he's devastated, but he's happy to know that we're here. And I hear that every single day, that story.
And the fact that you talk to him, I mean, because you learn more about that person and other people, you've humanized a situation that has become inhuman for many. So, don't minimize that personal touch. Can we hear some of the other stories?
I say we have at Hunger Free America a food action board where we recruit people who go to pantries and kitchens, people with lived experience, to advise us on policy and tell their stories. And one by one, we hear stories of people who were hungry before this, who got hungrier and poorer, and people just at the edge of poverty and hunger who became hungry and poor. There's a lot of media attention. Oh, in the line in Texas, there was a BMW, so lots of rich people are going hungry. That's a gross exaggeration. Most of the newly hungry were just at the edge of hunger and poverty before. I should briefly mention, we do two things. We do advocacy work, but we also do direct service work. So we have a national hunger hotline we run on behalf of USDA. Anyone can call 1-866-3-HUNGRY. For Spanish speakers, you can call 1-877-3-HAMBRE, HAMBRE.
Is that posted on the chat?
It is. And two, particularly since so much of this question is focused on Queens, we do have a staff of a few dozen people whose job it is to help sign up people for SNAP and WIC. We're doing some of that in person now, some of that remotely. We have done a lot of work in Queens. We have staff that speak Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, and Russian, and a number of other languages. So we'd be glad to help with that. We can talk later about the policy solutions, but even if you don't want to do policy work, just every pantry and kitchen in New York, I would hope, would work with us, work with others to help let their clients and customers know what benefits they could be eligible for.
Okay, some of the others.
Yeah. My experience with from our temple, Queens in NYC is surrounded by immigrants of all parts of the globe. When we look around, it's very obvious. Everyone have their own acceptance level of food and eating based on their eating practice. People cannot eat or digest any food what is available in the market. So a culturally or traditionally appropriate food is a must for everyone. So, and of course, obviously, one cannot afford to grow their own food because not everyone own land in New York City or in Queens. So a nutritious, safe, and healthy food is becoming less accessible for people, especially in Queens, because of multi-cultural people available here. And one should understand that not all food insecure people live in poverty. It is because they do not get culturally appropriate food or digestible food based on their eating habits. That's becoming more important. That's why people not able to consume every food available in the market. Hence, we should be looking at, so we decided to serve food which is traditional, which is cultural, which is appropriate food. And instead of calling it a so-called delicious meal, but obviously we don't want to forgo on the nutritious value. So considering this, our temple every alternate week, apart from every day that we offer food in the temple, we go and offer food in soup kitchens every alternate weeks in various places of worship in the New York City.
Okay. Alexander?
Yes, so I'll just Joel was speaking about that it's not so much the people who were well off, but they do tell the story well. So when we have people who were our donors, who are now on our bread line, yes, the person who has a placard in some building in Israel that they donated, and they're now on a bread line in the soup kitchen. And the wife calls me and says, I'm standing here online. I just can't take it. Can you help me? Are you inside? And I said, just don't worry, go home. And I just delivered it to them. And what can you do to a donor who gave you thousands of dollars in the past and is now on a bread line? And it's very sad. And it's also kind of like, these are all people who fall through the safety net, because let's say they own their house, but now they're like no liquid income or things like that. And another thing, like Joe mentioned before, food stamps is great and the most important, and we should make sure that these ways of distributing help monetarily is way better than a bread line. But the reality is, our lines are filled with immigrants. People who are scared or are not eligible for the safety net, and kind of we end up being filling the cracks. People who were not at all eligible for food stamps or are scared to apply because of what the administration made all these scare tactics the last 4 years for people who are eligible, that they might not be able to get their green card if they have some history and things like that. So people who some of the family is eligible are just very scared and getting help. And these are the people who end up coming to charities like ours.
Yeah, I know there are people, many people who are on this call who are asking themselves, what can I do? What more can I do? And I think we have in the chat, we have all of your emails, your organizational emails. So that's one way to help. Are there any other particulars you want to mention, any of you on the panel, of what people can do? So we don't just talk about it, but we do something about it. Anyone?
If I could just say a few words about the food crisis in our community. It's not just a matter of not having enough to eat, as Ravi and other people have mentioned. This is a political problem. The fact that our government is not prioritizing the needs of low-income residents and the many people who have lost their jobs, many people who are facing eviction, these larger social issues must be addressed immediately. Right. And so I urge everyone here to contact our local city council members, the people running for the next mayor of New York City, and make food justice, economic security an issue that they will prioritize when they become elected officials. I can also tell you that from the perspective of the Chamber of Commerce and the Flushing Interfaith Council, we have been looking at long-term solutions in addition to the current emergency food assistance that we're helping provide. The Chamber has been also organizing green markets, connecting local farmers with local residents here, and actually trying to help people to become entrepreneurs so that they can actually start selling food and products, locally made products here in our community, and to circulate money and keep capital within our community. That's a huge problem that a lot of multinational corporations are now coming into Main Street and siphoning off money into other countries and other places in the United States. We need the money here. We need to invest the money in our community. We're also, for the past 8 years, have been supporting the Flushing Community Supported Agriculture Program, which has been bringing food from local farmers, organic, nutritious food every week. We're feeding 50 families in the community. We recently were able to get a grant from Con Edison to provide free membership to low-income families. It's really important to not only support the people here in our community, but also to make sure that the food supply and the plight of local farmers is also addressed, because that's a big part of the problem, that we see food being grown by large agro corporations and being dumped if they can't find the supplier. And I think we also have to really critically evaluate the food supply chain in this country. It's not working.
I'd say three things everyone can do is advocate, donate, and volunteer if you can afford to donate. Advocate real quickly. Someone asked the three top priorities at the federal level. Number one, getting the U.S. Senate to pass a serious aid package. I put a link in chat about our hunger clock on that. Two, on the federal level, weighing in with the Biden-Harris transition team to tell them to take serious steps on this day one they take office. On the state level, I know at least some of you have pretty good relationships with Governor Cuomo. There's something he can do overnight with the stroke of a pen to reduce hunger among restaurant workers. He previously exempted restaurant workers from the $15 minimum wage. That's outrageous. He can change that immediately. Restaurant workers are hungrier than ever. If restaurants are open, they can pay the living wage and not essentially pay poverty wages that rely on non-existent tips. And at the local level, we really need the next mayor to make this a top priority. We are working with other hunger groups to sponsor a forum sometime in February on this issue. We're going to try to get Errol Lewis of New York One, who said he might be able to moderate that, and we'd love many of your groups to co-sponsor that to really get the next mayor to have a comprehensive food plan. You may know, assuming ranked choice voting stays and assuming there's no serious Republican candidate for mayor, the next mayor of New York City is essentially going to be picked next June in a ranked choice primary. And so we just have a few months really to influence whoever she or he is.
All right. One of the things I'm hearing, and it's a responsibility, it's a collective responsibility, is that when we have candidates seeking higher office, we need to hold them accountable. And this issue has to be at the top of the agenda, not, as an afterthought. And I think we can do much more in demanding that the issue of food insecurity is something that needs to be addressed forthrightly. The second part of that to me is, we have a statement in Jewish tradition of, if a person is falling into poverty, you got to strengthen that person, hold him up so he or she doesn't fall. And I think sometimes from what I see, we wait too long. We wait till people already are suffering to alleviate the pain, when we should be doing much more in the proactive sense. And I think that's another conversation we need to have as to what more we can do, so you don't have these staggering numbers of people who are hurting so badly. Melinda, why don't we go into the chat? We have a number of people with questions, and we want to give them an opportunity to have those questions answered. Melinda, can you pick out some of those questions?
Yes,
All
actually,
right.
I'd like to start with Mark Fowler's question in the chat about, and he asked that he asked that panelists share about how you promote the opportunity of food banks to address the shame people experience. It's something that we've heard, that people are either afraid to go, people don't speak out, and then there are those in the community who have resources and maybe hesitant to give, or don't understand that that see a distinction between those on the food line and themselves, and that builds on it. So if you can speak to that.
Yeah, I wonder, by the way, Melinda, listening to you, how many people, for example, in Queens are going to food pantries in Brooklyn or elsewhere because they don't want to be seen by their neighbors or their friends. They don't want them to know. The shame factor is something that can't be minimized. But let's get some people to respond to what you just said. Anyone?
I did something drastic with all the 15 years I've been running the place. We never published any photos of clients. It was all about the volunteers, this one visiting, and how the vegetables are peeled, the bags are put together, but never about the bread line or the people in the inside. For the first time, I made like a decision to say, no, we're going to make a normalization of it. And we published photos and videos of these long bread lines. And I said, this is now normal. We're not going to play as if this is shameful or this is taboo. no, we're gonna, and I actually called the local newspapers. I said, I want you to publish those. This should be a call for people to feel comfortable on those lines. We have to stop keeping it as taboo, because that's the reality. The administration chose to give more money for food boxes than for food stamps. So that's what we got to do, and we got to make it normal. So that's one of the things that kind of, in my evolution during COVID, this is one of the things that that we did. Obviously, we also then went the other way and eliminated our bread line, went totally digital with the bread line. We now have 500 families a day picking up groceries staggered throughout the day by appointment. So there isn't this long, shameful, tiring bread line. So both ways we kind of handled it somewhat.
All right. Some of the others? Joel, I think you wanted to say something.
I didn't, except that this is a challenge perennial in both government food assistance and charitable food assistance. And that's, again, why we need to replace charity with justice. As you know, Rabbi, the root word of tzedakah, which often is translated as charity, really is justice.
That's why I think Melinda, when first discussing the issue, said food justice. That we have to do a lot more than just provide the food. There's a bigger issue to be addressed here. Anybody else want to add a thought?
Actually, I want to have a follow-up question. Do you know, for those who are connected to houses of worship, is there been any work within the congregations you're connected to about taking away the shame of being in need and asking for help when it is needed? And maybe that's something, if people ask what
how do you avoid that sense of shame? How do we provide anonymity for people seeking help?
Really think it's just establishing a personal connection. People are learning now that coming to our pantries, we bring other organizations in to walk the line, talk to people. We just try, we are here to help, and people are learning that. And it's just a simple personal connection. It's not shameful. If we're smiling, we're helping you, and everyone needs help at some point. That's our message every day.
Yeah. And I think people have to recognize this problem that we're having was not caused by COVID. It was there pre-COVID. We've been talking about food insecurity for a long time. And COVID has just, I think, heightened the awareness. But it is something that is very serious, severe, and needs to be addressed. And thank God for the faith communities. I think we recognize that if we weren't doing some of these things, who else would? I don't know. And I'm sure there are other good people. But thank God the faith communities make this a priority in their work. Anybody else want to talk about that shame factor?
Actually, before you do that, I just want to acknowledge that Pedro Rodriguez, who's the CEO of La Jornada Food Pantry, just joined us. So Pedro, if you will tell us a little bit about what your organization does. And one of the things that we've been doing is sharing stories of the people using our services and what life looks like. So if you please share.
Yeah. Good morning. Thank you very much for having us. We're having a couple of situations here with our delivery this morning. So I'm sorry about being late. I'm sure a few people can relate to that. With La Jornada, we are a food pantry. We've been doing it for the last 12 years. Last year we were serving 1,000 families a week. This year last week we served over 10,000 families. So we have become something that we never expected to become, one of the major food pantries in Queens. We've been fighting with the federal government, fighting with the city government, fighting with the state government for food, and sometimes successfully, sometimes not that successfully. the need is incredible. The need for food was probably in Corona and Flushing, and this area was already, I would say, people were at the 50% level of food insecurity last year. And right now, we probably are in the 75-80% level. I believe that probably more than 50% of the people living in Corona and in Flushing have their jobs, and they're doing really, really badly. The phone does not stop ringing. The line for appointments does not stop continuously from Monday through Friday. Is an incredible need, and it doesn't seem to be coming down at all. I think it's continue to go up. Today was the last day that one of the vendors for the CPAC packages was delivering food, and they just told us that they're not going to be able to do it today. So we're losing probably more than 1/3 to 1/2 of the food that we are giving out to those 10,000 families. So we're going to go and see what we can do. It's going to be a very difficult December without that food, and we're going to go ahead and continue to fight. That's all we can do.
Pedro, thank you. Thank you for the great work that you, the community, are doing for others who just need you, desperately need you. Melinda, I think you had a few more questions before we conclude. Melinda?
Yes, there we go. There a couple have been asked about, one spoke about how people get more information about, they think that there's only one food bank in their neighborhood when there are many around. But connected is how people who, and this is from Helen Lunch from Irwin, who wants to know if people don't live near food bank, if people have specific needs, food needs, but don't live near food banks that are serving those needs, religious or vegetarian needs, how can we help them find appropriate places and get the food that they need, and so they can be fed without compromising other values?
Yeah, I think Ravi also spoke about that before, that you got to be culturally, religiously sensitive to those who are seeking food. So some of you want to address that, about how we fulfill those specific needs of people?
Yeah, see, people, we welcome everyone, especially because we serve only vegetarian in our temple. So we do not, as I told you earlier, we don't restrict, or we don't have any filtration of people of this way. Like anyone who comes in, they get food. Okay, so all day, all 7 days, we give food to people.
Yeah, Alexandra, different diets you have in the within the organization?
So we do kosher. Yeah, and it is a challenge. It is a challenge, but I would say we're actually giving out recipes for matzah brai, because we got Menashevitz to give us a few trailer loads of their end of season, kind of close to the sell-by date of the last year's matzah. So we're giving out a lot of matzah now, and oil and eggs and things like that. It is kind of it is always interesting to see like the different needs that people have. Like when some people like appreciate the beans, some people appreciate the rice, and some people but again, we serve all of New York, and it's we try to still do what we call client choice, but it's kind of semi-client choice, where we are operating from the outside and we have like a station. We give people what they can get, and they can then choose. I could say a lot of New Yorkers who never tasted kosher chicken were able to get kosher chicken the last 9 months or 10 months. We gave out almost close to $1 million worth of chicken during the pandemic. It is a challenge. food is very complicated. It's very hard to put people on a diet. Food needs to come every person, like every individual. Imagine just delivering to a person every day, like a ration, like here is your peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It doesn't work that way, especially in America where people weren't used to that before. And we can think of what we see sometimes in the news, a whole boatload of rice arriving to a country with a famine. That's not how Americans see food, and that's not how people with different dietary traditions see food. It is very challenging on many levels.
Alexander, could you give the recipe for matzah brei to Jennifer, Catholic Charities? I'm sure they never had matzah brei there, so that might be an interesting cultural experience. So some of the others as well.
I just said, I've pioneered doing matzah brei with barbecue hot sauce, which is excellent. Just a quick answer to this as well. I put in the chat our list of food guides for New York City. If you don't want to call the hotline, we have food guides in English, Spanish, Chinese, Russian, where you can find out where you can get free food. But not to be a broken record, but that is my job. This is yet another example why charities can't possibly substitute for jobs and a safety net. While they're between 600 to 800 soup kitchens and food pantries in New York City, depending on how you count them, there are 8,000 places you can use SNAP. 8,000 places, including virtually every farmer's market in New York City. Most particularly pantries are open maybe once a week, some less frequently that. Most food stores in New York are open 6 or 7 days a week. So that's yet another reason why it's so much better that people have the money or the benefits to shop on their own.
Yeah. By the way, someone sent me an email and said, look, we saw people who overshop. They're afraid with the pandemic, let me buy more than I may need. Said, how about when you buy those extras, you donate some of that to a local food pantry, because you have an abundance and someone else has a shortage. So maybe you can give a little bit more to those who have a lot less. And I think that was just a very simple, suggestion, but one that could easily be followed. Melinda, anything else before? I think
yes, actually on that question, Barry Woolner wanted to know if there was a specific group that reaches out to those who are undocumented and not eligible for government subsidies. And I think it's a good follow-up question to Joel and the push for these SNAP benefits, but what about those who cannot get those?
We should make them legal. We should.
That is the simple answer. You're right. Okay.
Go ahead.
The answer is that to make that card available for everybody. Don't discriminate because you are whatever from country you're for or whatever. No, you just have to, if somebody's hungry, will come to a center like yours and say, this is my needs, and then somebody will give you a card and you use it. And it's simple as that. Don't make it more complicated than it is. The food is available in all the supermarkets, like you say. It will be simple to use, and all the food pantries will be the centers where the people can come in and get those cards, and we will save an incredible amount of labor, an incredible amount of things. But the problem is, what is the heart of the people who are giving it?
I'll just say real quickly on the advocacy side, I agree that should be made available to everyone regardless of immigration status. Again, to cite the Bible, both the Old and New Testament repeatedly talk about feeding strangers, which clearly would translate today to be foreigners. But on a practical basis, you should be aware that even undocumented parents, if their children were born here, their children could be eligible, number one. Number two, the Women's, Infants, and Children program for pregnant women and children under 5 has no immigration restrictions. 3, the grab-and-go food program that the city of New York now has at hundreds of schools around the city. There are no immigration restrictions, and New York City, for vulnerable people, for seniors who have a hard time going out, people with disabilities, people with compromised immune systems, there's also a home delivery program with no restrictions. So again, you can contact us at the Hunger Hotline and we can let immigrants know about all those things.
All right. I want to just wrap it up. Anybody have any other closing comments? Anybody want to add anything to what's been said here?
I'll go on a very quick one.
Mm-hmm.
Just a quick one to say what the rabbi said, like people should share. And I would say the fact that we were able to mobilize during the pandemic is all because of the good people out there. We didn't have some slush fund or something that made us able to do this. There's a lot of good people coming forward. I recently checked. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we got 20,000 unique donations that made us able to do this 500% increase in demand, to be able to keep up with it. So yes, the people out there, those who still have and should have, are coming forward. And that's the fact that we're able to do what we're doing is because there's so many good people listening to you, Rabbi, and sharing.
Okay. Anybody else? I think, John, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I think the chief takeaway for me is from this forum is that the food crisis that we're facing in our community is a political problem. As Joel mentioned, we must hold our elected officials accountable. We have tremendous waste in this country. 40% of the food that's produced just goes into the garbage. Meanwhile, we have people literally dying on our streets. Pedro Rodriguez actually videotaped someone who had an old gentleman who passed away a month ago, living in a cardboard box with his shoes neatly placed outside, which is an Asian tradition. And it really breaks my heart that our political system has so far not addressed this humanitarian crisis. What does actually give me hope is all of the faith organizations here today that are stepping up. Pedro Rodriguez, he's volunteering his time. He has hundreds of people coming in every day, volunteering their time. And we as a community are providing mutual support. We are addressing the issue, but we need help. So I'm pleading with the people who are listening to this forum, please volunteer, please donate, and please contact your local elected official.
Thank you. Let me just say, firstly, thank you to all of you who are on the panel, and thank you, Rabbi Zalma. You are a great convener, and you brought us all together. Thank you again, Rabbi Michael Miller and Rabbi Bob Kaplan, for your vision in seeing a community coming together, transcending faith boundaries, because we all need to be together on this. Someone mentioned before a Quaker service, and I recall years ago going to a Quaker service. It was completely silent, and I was unaware of the Quaker traditions, and I walked over to an usher and I said, "When does the service begin?" And he turned to me and he said, "Sir, actually the service begins when you walk outside. When you go into the street, that's when the real service begins." And again, I think listening and learning from today, all of us recognize that when we walk out of our houses of worship, even now when it's virtual, we have a responsibility to continue to do as much as possible so that people do not suffer from food insecurity. It really is shameful that in a country like America, we have the staggering numbers. I see in the United States, almost 42 million suffer from food insecurity. Here in New York, about 2 million. That is something disgraceful. We need to do something about it on a host of levels. So we're going to continue to work together to, as Joel has on his sign behind him, we're going to try to get that word hunger out of it. So thank you so much, all. And we'll be in conversation in the future as well.
Thank you. And I want to thank Rabbi Joe Potasnik and amazing for facilitating our amazing conversation here. And that we are planning on having a similar conversation with those that work in Brooklyn early in the year. So please look for that too. And we look forward to having many good things come out of this and help that for those who are in need, and to remember that we're all part of this wonderful city and we can take care of each other. Thank you all for joining us. We will be sending out a follow-up email with a lot of the resources, donations. Thank you everybody for contributing to the chat, to the questions, and to your experience and your resources. This has really been a conversation. Now go out and act. Thank you all.
Thank you.